Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special episode of a Source One presentation here. I've got my co-host Nico Lagan joining me, and good morning if you're on the west side, and if you're on the east side, good afternoon. Nice to have you all here joining us. We got a special episode for you because we put together a fantastic panel to have a frank, open, and honest conversation about Alberta's Bill 9. And if you haven't been living under a rock, you should be fully aware that Alberta is now invoking the notwithstanding clause one more time to go ahead and protect children, parents, and women here in Alberta. So what I did is I gathered together quite the panel for you today. And in about 15 minutes, Honorable Mickey Amery himself will be joining us to speak to us about the process, the reasoning, and frankly, the purpose of having to do this one more time here in Alberta, invoking the notwithstanding clause. My co-host, Nico Lagan, you should know him by now. He's been on several episodes with me as we do the Source One Truth series. Mostly it's Saturday evenings, but today we are here to join you on a Saturday afternoon. He's an outspoken critic on this particular subject. He definitely thinks that parents and children and women should be protected, and he's a man's man. So thank you very much for joining us today, Nico. So also have Blaine. Blaine, please pronounce your last name for me.
It's Badiuk. But just Blaine. It's a one-name brand.
Just like Madonna, just a one-name brand. And we got two. We also have Jack, who's a one-name brand as well. But Blaine is a fantastic guest on our show. He's been on before to share the story of being a transsexual here in Alberta, conservative, a Daniel Smith supporter. It's quite the collection to have to go ahead and get out there and have your voice. So thank you very much for joining us, Blaine. We also have Kellie-Lynn Pirie, who's a detransitioner, born female, and who woke up and decided, I didn't want to be here. And then that's when she saw what the community really meant, like really meant. If you want to decide to detransition, you can lose everything. So she'll be sharing her story with us. We have Mia Hughes, who's absolutely one of the bravest people I've ever met, gets up on stage to have conversations about this crazy gender ideology that's out there and speaks the truth in a calm, reasonable, and fact-driven way. I'm really pleased to have her joining us here today. And we also have James, you might be surprised to know, James Jack Decker, who is a gay conservative in Alberta who's been fighting very hard to go ahead and get his voice out there. And he's also taken the punches from one side that used to call him a community member. And three of these panel members, so Blaine, Kellie-Lynn, and James, were also participants in the process of some of these laws. So whether they're sitting at a round table, having their input on the validation stage, or just contributing to the conversation as the law is being introduced to Alberta, we have three people who actually participated in the lawmaking. So as we're waiting for our other guests to join us, let's go around this table. First, we'll start with Nico. Nico, you've been on some U.S. platforms, some large ones, debating this conversation. You want to go ahead and share some of that experience with us?
It's all about open debate. Like I was just in San Francisco not too long ago to debate a lesbian couple as to who's allowed to have children, how men are not important in a kid's life. I was in LA not long ago speaking about what we're going to speak about today. So it's very interesting. I got to say, just first and foremost, I'm very happy that Daniel Smith is taking this on, because this to me is just common sense. Bill 2627, the fairness in sport. It's astonishing that you need to have Bill 9 in place to protect children because the Supreme Court has been hijacked by woke individuals. Blows my mind, but kudos to all of you on that panel, and kudos to Daniel Smith for what she's doing.
Blaine, you've been one of the first people we brought on the show. I met you at an AGM. You're a fantastic human being. You and my wife got on just fine and did a great episode. And you also participated in part of this. You came out to support Danielle Smith. And you know, being in your shoes in Alberta as a conservative that supports Danielle Smith, it's a tough road to be on. So thank you very much for that work that you're doing.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And, I agree. It's shocking we need to get to this point and we need to do it. And, I think it's unfortunate that we need to use the notwithstanding clause. I think Section 1 satisfies it, but, we have to protect children at the end of the day. And anyone fighting this needs to have their head examined, I would say.
Now, I noticed a couple of days before the announcement came out, you were actually calling for the notwithstanding clause to be used to protect these laws. So Did you kind of see what was coming down? You saw that the need was there?
I predicted it. I think we saw on the order paper there was Bill 9, protecting Children Act, and so I predicted that they would use the notwithstanding clause because we can't continue to delay. I think the Premier was accurate, and Section 1 provides enough justification. But we have, I think, as Nico just said, we have the Supreme Court and other courts who have been taken over by radical ideology, and we can't just allow this to live in, the question land for the next 5 years. So, we need to take action now, and I'm glad this government's doing that, and hopefully we can put this to rest for the next little bit.
Thank you for sharing your voice in such bold ways. Now, Jack, speaking of sharing your voice in such bold ways, that's how I met you. I met you online on X. You came on the show, and you're quite the proponent of truth, and you'll stand up to bullying of all kinds. Will you go ahead and share some of your story with us?
I actually came into this by just showing support for a friend of mine for the initial meeting that we had with Premier Smith, Lois Cardinal and I, and Eva Cadola. I said her name wrong. She's going to kill me, I swear to God. But we went and met with the Premier, and I was literally there for moral support for the first meeting. And then, we all got to talking afterwards, and it was great. And then I became involved in the roundtables and discussions and all that. So I do get a lot of flack, which is kind of fun for my participation and what I've done. But truthfully, all I've done is just speak the truth and say what other people are scared to say. And I do get quite a few messages in my DMs and in real life from people that come up and say thank you, because they're afraid to say something in real life where I don't care. So I'm like, yeah, go ahead. They've done everything they possibly could to me, and that's totally fine. Yeah, keep going.
Excellent. And you definitely want to make sure that children are protected, parents are protected, and women are protected. I've seen some of your posts. You're pro.
Yeah, that's one of the main things, is that because of what I went through as a child and the way I grew up and my experiences within the community. It made me really kind of step back and say, okay, so something's very, very wrong here, and we need to stand up for these kids. So.
Thank you very much, Jack, for that. Mia, you are an impressive young person who's gotten out there all over Canada, U.S., well, more the U.S. than Canada, and being very outspoken. You take the hits, you take the threats, and sometimes you have to kind of stand up to that entire industry. Want to go ahead and share some of your experiences?
Some of my experiences? Well, my main focus for a long time has been the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. And that's what I speak about a lot, because if you want to understand this medical scandal, you have to understand WPATH, as it's known. So I've spoken in the US. I was just in Brussels. I spoke in a committee at the EU Parliament, in various places in Europe and Canada. So it's a very complex medical scandal is the problem. And in Canada, certainly, I've known this for a long time, but the reaction to Bill 9 in the last few days has shown that Canadians don't understand how serious this medical scandal is. And one of the main reasons that they don't understand is because they trust the experts. And that would be WPATH, and that would be all of the medical associations. So a large part of my focus is drawing attention to how unbelievably fraudulent and corrupt WPATH is, and how ideologically captured all of our medical associations are, which always brings me to the same point, that the activists will say Danielle Smith has overreached and the government has no place in the doctor-patient relationship, but that would technically be true in a normal situation, but we're not living in normal times. When a field of medicine cannot regulate itself, is completely guided by extremist trans activists, and has no respect for the Hippocratic Oath, it's the responsibility of governments to step in and protect people from medical harm.
That's a fantastic introduction. I believe that's exactly what we're all working for. And speaking of working for this, I'm going to introduce Honorable Mickey Amery to the podcast here. So, Honorable Amery, just give us a moment, and we're finishing up our introductions, and then we'll step right into you. Kellie-Lynn, I met you a few times. You came on the show, shared your story about transitioning to male, waking up to the difficulties there, then detransitioning back to female, and understanding the trials and tribulations and the lack of support in that community.
Yeah, and there is, when I was involved in trans activism, the concern was not, is transitioning people helpful? The concern was research was indicating that the medical interventions were not helpful. So we sought to contact the ethics committees at the major universities with a message to please stop pathologizing a vulnerable and marginalized, stigmatized population. It wasn't about the fact that the Swedish study was coming out showing that the morbidity and mortality was increased. It was that we wanted to suppress anyone from repeating and replicating that research. There was not a concern at the WPATH level that the research was indicating this transitioning people does not help. The medical outcomes or the mental health outcomes are not improved. And from that point, they proceeded to involving other people's children. And when I understood exactly what was going on there, that's when I could no longer be part of the transition industry.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us. And I think it's exactly what Mia said. WPATH is where everybody's pointing to for the expertise, and they don't have the expertise, the science, or even the long-term research to go ahead and support any of that. Honorable Mickey Amery, thank you very much for joining us today. You're the Justice Minister for Alberta. You're definitely played a role in all of this, making sure that parents, children, and women are protected in Alberta. It's kind of sad that we need laws to do this, and then we need to bring out the notwithstanding clause to go ahead and protect those laws. But here we are. So thank you very much for joining us today. And go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience that may not know you from the East. And yeah, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, and good afternoon to all of you. Of course, Mickey Amery, Minister of Justice and Attorney General for the province of Alberta. And I recently introduced Bill 9. Of course, that was the bill that introduced the notwithstanding clause on 3 laws that we had previously passed here in Alberta in relation to the topic that we're discussing, Bills 26, 27, and of course 29. And so happy to be here. Thank you very much, and looking forward to the conversation that we're going to have.
Yes, we're very pleased to have you, and we know that we have you for the next 15 minutes or so. So we're going to be focusing more on coming to you with some of this questions, and then we'll jump to the rest of the panel for the rest of the show. Right off the top, from my perspective, Honorable Amery, what was your thoughts when you first brought in these three laws? Like, did we really reach a point here in Alberta that we needed to protect children, parents, and women at that level?
Yeah, well, most certainly, I think we have, and we did. You'll remember that the 3 laws that we introduced were intended to protect young people from irreversible surgical or hormonal procedures that they were not ready to make at a young age. We're also looking for legislation that would help strengthen the role of parents in their young children's education, and then, of course, ensuring fairness in sport. All 3 of those things were things that people came forward to us and said, these need to be addressed. They're becoming a real problem. And so with that, we brought forward those 3 pieces about the same time last year. Unfortunately, what happened is that almost immediately we were challenged by a number of groups, some of which were outside of Alberta, and they sought to seek an injunction to prevent us from implementing these 3 bills. And that's really what the stimulus for Bill 9 was all about. It was to say to everybody, really, but certainly the people, the families, the young people, and all of those involved in this very public debate, that the well-being and safety of children will always come paramount. We'll use every single legal and constitutional tool that we have at our disposal to make sure that young people are protected, that they are able to make those decisions when they're ready to make those decisions. And that's what brought us here today.
Okay, and as you're going through the lawmaking process here, you're going through committees and roundtables and having conversations with all types of Albertans. 3 of them are kind of here that participate in the process with us as well. Can you kind of take Albertans and the rest of Canada through the process of it? It's not like you just woke up one day and said, we want to do this. You actually sat down and had conversations with many people to come to the conclusion that protection was needed.
Yeah, most certainly. And I recognize Kellie-Lynn from the announcement that we made in December of last year, who stood by us and who was very supportive of the three pieces of legislation I'd mentioned earlier. What happened is in about December of last year, we passed bills 26, 27, and 29 relating to all of the discussions we're having here today. Fairness in sport, of course, medical procedures on children, and pronoun policies in schools. And once we were challenged, or within days, I would say, we were challenged by these organizations who sought to seek injunctions, prevent us from implementing these important bills. And we heard from, all Albertans, really, from corner to corner, from all four corners of the province, to say, hey, look, this is important. These are incredibly social, complex issues that we need addressed immediately. More importantly, I think, we talk a little bit about using the notwithstanding clause and how important that was, and the debate that's come up from it. But when you're talking about incredibly important issues, I think the public deserves a debate, both in the legislature and outside of the legislature. And we cannot tie up these important issues in courts for a number of years. The real consequences are those that our children have to bear, and we're just not prepared to do that. So I wanted to say that process-wise, Bill 9 came forward last week in the legislature, invoking the notwithstanding clause, which effectively says that regardless of the court challenges and the injunctions, we're not prepared to tie up this very important issue in years and have our children bear the burden of waiting for years and years for a court decision to come forward. These are important issues, far too important for us to wait until that happens. And so the Bill 9 seeks to put a stop to that, to give us some clarity and finality in this situation, and say that these are important laws that Albertans value, and we want them implemented and operational immediately.
Thanks for that clarification. And Kellie-Lynn, what was it like for you to be standing there as these were being announced?
Oh, you push and you push, and it seems like you're not getting anywhere. And then to be in a moment of history where a politician is actually stepping forward and saying, yes, it is important to acknowledge that children are not at a developmental stage where they understand the decisions they're being asked to make. And they need to be protected and given time to grow up and understand and be able to evaluate the state of what is actually being offered to them and what the research is saying the outcomes can be. It was incredible.
Thank you very much. And Blaine, what was your reaction when you heard these laws were coming down and then passed? What was your take on that?
Yeah, when they were first announced, I was hesitant. I'm always hesitant when government is intervening on medical decisions. But then we saw the international evidence quite demonstrate that there was a lack of evidence. And if we're going to have evidence-based healthcare, we actually have to follow the science. And it was really unfortunate that these organizations who claim to represent me, but do not, chose to spend our tax dollars fighting these crucial legislation through the court, instead of actually engaging in meaningful conversation. And so I thought it was eventually it'll be inevitable that we would have to, unfortunately, use the notwithstanding clause. I think the Premier outlined very clearly that Section 1 is strong enough, but I think as the Minister just said, we can't delay this for another 5 years, waiting to see the court process play out.
Time is of the essence here when you're talking about developing children. So definitely. And sorry about that switching. There's a bug in StreamYard. Jack, I'm going to come to you next. What did it mean to you? You were a grown man at the time, but is it important to you that Alberta steps forward for children?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I was there. I was there for all of it. I was there for, well, the public stuff. I was there the day it was announced in legislation as well. It was very important. There seems to be so many people have come out and from, I hate using left and right, but from the left, that have made these claims that this is affirming and this is going to save lives and blah, 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 blah. And it's been debunked. And so it was just getting to that point of complete and total, forgive my word, insanity, where people had to actually stand up and say, okay, this is enough. Let's just take a step back here. Let's figure this out. So when the legislation was brought forward, I was very happy. I have 15 nieces and nephews, so and they're all in school. So of course this was very important to me, and they do face issues. So yeah.
Thank you very much. And that is actually one of the battlegrounds is the schools. And this is where some of these organizations are fighting. Now, Mia, when you heard Mickey Amery mention here that international groups got involved, you're not surprised. You're not surprised at all. You want to kind of give us a little bit of background on who that might be and why they get involved in politics in Alberta?
I'm sorry, I missed that. So international groups were involved. Who was it, Kelly?
Filing lawsuits to challenge these laws. Almost immediately, they were challenging the laws in Alberta.
It was EGAL, though. Was it not a nationwide? It was. It's EGAL Canada were at the forefront of challenging these laws, and of course, that doesn't surprise me at all. They claim to be an LGBT charity or something, but they're all about the T. They're a very extremist trans activist group, and they see any concern, any questioning of this medical treatment for adolescents as being transphobic hate. And so they will immediately vilify anybody who raises the alarm. They'll immediately vilify anyone who suggests that performing this experiment on healthy adolescents is misguided. So no, I wasn't surprised by that. Was there an international one, though?
Mickey, sorry,
Yeah.
Mr.
No,
Amery, was there an international?
I think Mia hit it correctly. It was EGAL, it was Skipping Stone, a number of supporting those two organizations that were leading the court application and court injunction. One of the most interesting things, and I'm sure you guys have talked about it, but I do want to highlight a little bit more about where some of this support from the scientific community came from. We certainly have had a very robust and public debate about this, and you've seen online and in the legislature that the left certainly has taken a very obvious position. But I cannot disregard some of the research and the reports that have come out from leading European and North American jurisdictions that have said that the benefits of some of these procedures and hormone therapy, puberty blockers, and likewise is far outweighed still by the risks that young people are facing. And we still don't even know the long-term effects of those things. We've heard similar sentiment echoed by countries like Sweden, Finland, Denmark, and New Zealand. And look, these are leading European and international consensus opinions. I cannot disregard that. I like what James said earlier. Let's take a step back here. Let's let these young folks get a little bit older, mature, and decide from then when they're ready to do so. But it would be certainly not only irresponsible, but something that I would refuse to carry as a burden in what I do and in my role. And I think the Premier feels the same way in allowing young folks to make these decisions when they're far too young to do so, when their brains haven't fully developed, when we know that happens well into their 20s. I think that is something that we can all agree on, whether it's right or left, if you will. The other thing that's important to note is that there are two, sort of internationally recognized organizations. The first is the United Nations, of course, the UN Special Rapporteur on violence against women, has said that they've called for a social, legal, and medical prohibition on transition of children who claim to experience gender dysphoria. Of course, we know that the International Olympic Committee as well is moving forward to support and align in a lot of the things that we're bringing here forward. Plus, we have people here in Alberta and in Canada that have certainly gone through very difficult challenges with this. And so we think that we're on the right side of history. We certainly know that we're not an outlier when we look at the international community and the medical evidence that is arising and surfacing from that. And that is very important for us. We cannot disregard that, and we will refuse to ignore some of the, the legal and the medical research that is coming up about this very important topic.
Fantastic. And thank you for bringing up all of those things. The New Zealand study and the international community is getting together on this one. And even the Olympics came out very strongly on this one. Nico, as someone out in Quebec and has a young family and growing, what are your thoughts when you see Alberta take the lead on this kind of thing? Are you hopeful that it will spread?
It's about time somebody does it. I'm not surprised that it's Alberta. Let's be honest. I knew this wasn't going to come from Quebec. Let's be clear here. But it's about time, because it's about the children. At the end of the day, what you do after you're 18, that's on you. Whatever you want to do, I'm a live and let live type of individual. So whatever you want to do after 18, awesome. But the parents have the rights to protect their children, to be present and be part of those decisions, because it's absolute insanity to believe that a 14-year-old knows best. I would argue that any teenager out there has some type of mental issue. I know I did when I was young. I didn't know what left from right was. And you think that you think they're capable of actually taking a decision that might affect the rest of their life? Absolutely insane. So it's about time that we bring adults back into the room. And what was it, Bill 26, 27, and the fairness in sport. It's a shame that we need Bill 9 in order to prevent woke Supreme Court from changing this. But I'm hopeful. At the end of the day, I'm hopeful. Somebody has to do it first. It was Alberta. Hopefully the rest of Canada follows, although I would not hold my breath on that one, considering Mark Carney. I don't see that happening on the federal level, but I can be optimistic.
Honorable Amery, are there any other jurisdictions in Canada or otherwise that have reached out to you, maybe to use this as a template or anything like that?
Yeah, most certainly. I've always taken the position that Alberta Justice will support and share information with any of the provinces on any issue that we're working on. We know that Saskatchewan was well into this as well. They face their own problems and their own legal challenges, and they're certainly navigating it just like we are. But certainly we are very much aligned with some of the work that they're doing as well. And again, happy to continue that conversation. This is a very public and very timely debate, but it is certainly information that we'd be pleased to share with all jurisdictions, including Quebec, Ontario, and everywhere else in the country.
Excellent. A little stamp of approval from Alberta can maybe go a long way.
May I
facing...
jump in, Jason? Can I just jump in because I have something to add? Because Nico used the example of a 14-year-old, and I have a really important example from my research that I've done in the WPATH files. So these were leaked internal communications from the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. And there's a Canadian pediatric endocrinologist in there who is at BC Children's Hospital. And this is a man who puts these adolescents on this medical pathway. And he says in the WPATH files, he says, talking to 14-year-olds about fertility preservation is like talking to a blank wall. They'll be like, ooh, baby's gross, because they don't have the cognitive maturity to think that far ahead into the future. So these doctors know full well, just as well as we do, that a 14-year-old cannot possibly make a decision that will impact their fertility for the rest of their life. But they still put the young people on the medical pathway. And he even said in the WPATH files as well that he sees these patients come back in their 20s and there is regret, and it doesn't surprise him at all. And still it doesn't stop him from doing it.
And that is part of the conversation here, Honorable Amery, is they're not developed yet. They can't make these decisions. You don't let 15 and younger drive. Maybe they can start their learners, but they can't buy alcohol, tobacco, cannabis, tattoos. There's a lot of things that we say, well, that's going to damage you, or that's permanent, or it might be a risk to others because you're not quite ready yet. And are you surprised to see unions and other organizations that are meant to represent people in a different way stepping forward on this issue, fighting you on this issue?
Well, look, I'm not surprised that they're stepping forward and fighting me on this issue, but I certainly am disappointed. This is not a partisan issue, and we never intended it to be one. And this matters. It's incredibly important for legislatures and provinces and people to come together when they debate complex value-based ideas. But at the end of the day, it should be the people who make the decision, not the courts, and not not the organizations that are collectively working together without the medical backing or the support from the international community when they take that position. And I want to say this absolutely matters. Going forward in the manner that we're going forward in is important to children and families, schools, and sports organizations who have been telling us that these are serious problems in our communities. And children deserve better. That's the bottom line. They deserve to be protected. They deserve to grow up in a safe environment, and they deserve for a government that looks out for their well-being. What they don't deserve is to live in a courtroom for several years while organizations, both within the province and outside of the province, tie it up with countless legal challenges, especially when the consequence of doing that ultimately will be borne by our young children. The introducing Bill 9 accomplishes exactly what we're all talking about here. Albertans will have clarity, will have accountability, and this is democracy working exactly as it should. Bill 9 doesn't protect the most vocal. It's intended to protect the most vulnerable, and that's exactly why I'm so passionate about moving this forward.
And as we wrap up, because I know your time's very valuable, and we had you for a little bit here, can explain, as Attorney General and Minister of Justice, the actual purpose of the notwithstanding clause and why it's being invoked? Because there's a framing of this that it attacks rights and is going after rights. But my understanding is it's a legal tool that was actually put in for the purpose of ensuring that runaway courts don't go ahead and circumvent the laws as made by the legislation.
Yeah, and that's fundamentally correct. Look, the notwithstanding clause doesn't override the charter. The notwithstanding clause is part of the charter, full stop. It was deliberately built in by the people, the planners who put this together, including Peter Lougheed, who was very, very adamant that it continue to be put into place so that when courts and when legislatures and communities collide over complex issues, social issues, that democratically elected leaders and not unelected judges have the final say in these important decisions. Now, these are temporary decisions. That's the nature of the notwithstanding clause. They can only be implemented for 5 years, but they make the elected officials accountable. We have introduced it into the legislature. That will be fully and robustly debated. We're very well aware that there is an equally robust debate happening in communities all across this province and likely all across this country as well. But the fact of the matter is that ultimately it is the elected officials that are going to be accountable for this and not the unelected judges who will not bear accountability like we would, for example. So it's important for us to make sure that this is put into the public atmosphere, that it is debated fully, that members of the public, our constituents, people within the legislature and all across the province can weigh in on this, and that really it highlights how fundamentally important and democratic the notwithstanding clause truly is. These are temporary decisions. They'll be in effect for 5 years. We'll pull back just a little bit. We'll assess the evidence as it develops. We know that it's developing very quickly, and we'll reassess and reevaluate when the appropriate time comes. But right now, most jurisdictions are arriving at a consensus, and that is that the risk is far outweighed. The risk outweighs the benefits by far, and because of that, it's incumbent upon us to take action.
Thank you very much. And what's the final procedures for this to become law? Are we in second reading, third reading? Where are we at? And when will a vote take place?
Yeah, most certainly. So I tabled Bill 9 last week. It went into first reading. It's moved into second reading as well now. I suspect that it will be very, again, robust and very difficult. But we are sometimes, look, you guys, sometimes, difficult decisions are popular. And sometimes the opposition will vigorously argue. But we know that we stand on the right side of history. We know that what we're bringing forward is appropriate. We know that it is difficult, and we know that it carries with it deeply personal issues to many families across this province. That's why I have made myself available as much as possible, both within the legislature and outside of it, to have these conversations, because I want to hear from families. I know that this is deeply personal, and I want them to know that ultimately we think that it's supported by the science all across the globe, that this is the right thing to do. It'll move through second reading here shortly. It'll likely go into committee for further discussion, debate, and suggestions by all parties for potential amendments. And once that goes through, it'll go to third reading, and hopefully it'll become law. And our three original laws, the ones referenced earlier, bills 26, 27, and 29, will operate as they were always intended to do.
Thank you very much, Honorable Amery. And if you want to connect to any of the guests here, I think you have some of the contacts, and I would highly recommend Mia if you want to be part of the committee or consultation in any way. But thank you for your time. I know you got to run. So any closing comments for Alberta and the rest of Canada that's watching?
Yeah, most certainly. I said this earlier in the legislature. First off, thank you for the offer. I feel like I will be reaching out to many of you as well to get your perspectives on some of the conversations that we've had today. But I said in the legislature just a couple of days ago that we join a international consensus that says this: love and support every single child in our province, and in fact everywhere. Provide them with the support, provide them with the love, and be there for them. But let us not rush to allowing them to make decisions that potentially will be life-changing and life-altering without giving them first the opportunity to develop both in body and in mind. And that is exactly what the premise of these three bills and then the subsequent Bill 9 truly seeks to achieve. Let's let children be children for once. Let's let them grow and develop, and let them grow into mature adults where if they still wish to make decisions, they are certainly able to do so, and this government will never interfere with that. But one thing that is fundamentally important for us is making sure that our young people grow and develop and become of an age where they can make these decisions without influence. And that's really the bottom line here. We think that this is the right thing to do. We are very, very strong, not only strongly behind it, but passionate about it, because we know how important it is to stand for those who need us to stand for them, the most vulnerable in our community, which are their children. There's nothing more precious, and there is very little that we will not do to protect our children.
Absolutely. And sometimes the children don't accept or understand, but later in life, they thank you for it. So I suspect in a generation or two, you're going to receive a lot of thanks for this, Honorable Amery. So thank you for your time today. Go get them, and we'll be paying attention on the legislature. And if you want to come back after it's all passed and update all of us, I'd be honored to have you back.
Really happy to be here. Thank you to all of you, and thank you for the opportunity to have a chat with each and every one of you. Have a wonderful day.
Take care. Have a nice Saturday. Bye. Well, that was a lot of fun. Okay, so folks, we only had him for that 15-20 minute window, so I did my best to kind of, get as much information out as I could. But now let's open up the panel to conversations. And Mia, I may have gotten you a little consultation job there. You have any problem coming out to Alberta, hang out, and get some 2 cents in there?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Do you have any problem coming to Alberta to help out and participate in the process?
Oh, I would be delighted to, of course.
Well, maybe we'll see what happens. If he asks for your number, I'll pass it on. Okay, so Kellie-Lynn, what did you think? Okay, this is unfortunate that this had to come to this, where we need to execute the notwithstanding clause. There's international groups, there's Canadian-wide groups, there's unions all fighting this. What are your thoughts at this stage, and what Honorable Amy? And by the way, I called him Mr. Amery at one point, and even Mickey felt a little silly about that one. Where we got you muted.
Yeah. Actually, as he was speaking, I was remembering that Olson Kennedy was the researcher who was caught suppressing her research findings. So the political nature of what used to be a medical relationship really needs to be talked about in all of this, because she suppressed her research because her findings said that transitioning kids did not help. And her response since she's been caught has been to start putting out peer-reviewed papers saying that the evidence-based research methods is inherently transphobic. Therefore, we should simply be asking 9-year-olds, are you happy you got ice cream for breakfast? If the child says, yes, I'm glad that I was allowed to wear a dress school today, or I'm glad that I got my hair cut and I can now wear boy clothes to school. That is our only measure of whether these are successful. We need to stop tracking suicidality. We need to stop tracking suicide. We need to stop tracking physical health measures, because she says they're all inherently transphobic. So they'll label almost anything transphobic because they're pushing a political agenda. They're not concerned about the physical health, the emotional health of the kids that they're intervening with. And their methodologies, their willingness to suppress research is showing that they're politically motivated. And I'm hoping more of that comes out as people are able to openly talk about actually what's going on and what the research is showing and what the research isn't showing. So I am hopeful that the atmosphere of debate that Premier Smith talked about when she introduced the legislation last year continues to exist within the province of Alberta, and perhaps even more within Canada.
Yeah, that's certainly one of the clubs they use a lot to call you transphobic. So to have a peer-reviewed paper calling it transphobic, that's bullying 101. And shutting down the conversation by using some term like that. Blaine, what are your thoughts when you hear Kellie-Lynn talk about that? Instead of actually researching this, taking the time to speak to young people and actually do longer term studies, they're just throwing around terms like transphobic to shut down the conversation.
Yeah, well, I'd call it transphobic about every other week on Twitter, simply because I defend these policies. And what I look at it historically. So historically for transsexuals, primarily transsexual women, there was long-standing medical safeguards and psychological processes that were followed for adults to, access this medical transition and in order to live our lives. I transitioned as an adult, but my teenage years weren't great. And of course, I look back, and if I had the opportunity to transition as a teenager, would my life have been better? Probably. The reality is we've now gone away of all of that. There is no safeguard, and there is no standards or processes, and that's the concern. And what I'm hoping is we can do the international research and the evidence. The UK is doing a beautiful study on the use of puberty blockers for under the age of 18, and I'm really intrigued to see what comes out of that, because I think that will help inform future policies. And I think we need to do more research on long-term studies. Those kids who are already on this, on these puberty blockers and on HRT, I would love, for them to be in a study so we can actually learn about this and then implement better evidence-based medicine in the future. But in the interim, we have to have evidence-based healthcare, and that's my biggest thing, is to protect kids and ensure, as the minister and the premier have always said, to support adults to make these adult decisions when they are ready.
And then, Blaine, what's your opinion on the sports as well? Because that's also protecting women in sports. And then also the schools got to disclose to parents if their children are trying to use pronouns or changing their name. What's your position on that part?
Yeah. For the schools, I think parents have a responsibility to be involved in their child's life. And unfortunately, what we saw over the past decade or so, we saw parents abdicate that responsibility and just disappear, frankly. And so you don't, I hate the term parental rights. You don't need rights. You need to be involved with your children. That's your responsibility as a parent. And so what I'm hoping that this does is it leads to these conversations between the kids and the parents. Of course, it's only, consent and notification if, they want to be referred to a different name or pronoun. It doesn't out kids. It's very simply, if you are out to the entire school community, your parents have to know, because your parents are going to find out. And I'd much rather that kid and the parent have a sit-down conversations, possibly facilitated with a social worker or psychologist, instead of that parent finding out from another parent, because I could not imagine what that should feel like at home. And I want kids support as best they can, and part of the policies was to ensure that kids had that support prior to parental notification, which is very important. On sports, I think of my friend April Hutchinson and hearing her story. and all the other female athletes who have had their competition taken away from them by biologically stronger athletes. I have been starting to hear some new concerns about because this policy does apply to the SGMS 12 of parents having to sign saying yes, my kid is biological female, and worries that if they outperform, there may be some transvestidation happening. I hope that doesn't actually take place. So I'm very interested to see what the next year plays out to see that, and if we need to amend the regulation to be stronger and protect sports. I'd be all in favor of that. But overall, I think it's not fair or safe for biological women and girls to be forced to compete against biologically stronger trans athletes, and that's what the bill does. And so, large strength supported them, with the hope, of course, of more research, more dialogue, more discussions, so we can get further along into a better point in these public policy discourses. But as soon as anything is labeled transphobic, you lose the ability to have these conversations. And so I do hope other premiers take on these bills. I think Alberta, made up beautiful policies. You literally just have to Control-C, Control-V, and Control-F and replace Alberta with whatever province it is, and just do it exactly like that. Do not try and write new legislation. I think the right in BC has tried this a couple times and they failed every time they've done it because they're terribly written pieces of legislation. Just copy the good work that Alberta's done. Would gladly, I don't support plagiarism as an academic, but please do plagiarize these bills across this country.
Thank you very much. And for my audience that may not know, Control-V is copy and paste and replace. So there you go. Translated it for everybody there. Jack, coming out is an important step for anybody, no matter what it is that they're coming out about. Are you concerned at all? Because some of the pushback is the schools are going to be coming out, forcing the coming out to their parents. What are your thoughts around that? Oh, sorry, we got you muted. Sorry about that. There you go. You're good to go.
Nobody wants me to talk, Nico. I swear. No, sorry.
There's some background noise. I just didn't know where it was coming from earlier.
Sorry.
It actually turned out it was Honorable Amery.
No, I think he had his family with him. My understanding is that this isn't about outing a child that's just displays feminine or masculine traits and all sort of stuff. I don't believe that that's exactly what it is. I know that that's what the left is trying to make it sound like. It's if suddenly they're presenting as a different sex, they want to be a girl or a boy, and they've told everybody this, and then it's a secret from the parents, and the parents are the last ones to know. And as we've seen, there was a case in British Columbia where the father was the last one to know, and his child had already transitioned, and then he got in trouble for not affirming that transition. So I believe that these laws are actually to make sure that the parents are involved in this process, that they understand, that the parents have the resources to understand what and why and how to support their child. I don't believe that you see these teachers online going crazy saying, I'm not outing my students. Now, this is about making sure that that child's mental health is okay. This isn't about the little feminine boy that plays with a Barbie. This isn't about the girl that's dressing up in plaid. Like, I'm using stereotypes, whatever, I'm gay. It's about if your child is definitely trying to present as something new, everyone's affirming this, the parents need to be involved. I mean, back when I was coming out, it was much different, much different when I was young, because I'm, 100. So it was much more difficult, and there were no supports, there were no nothing. So it is very important that that they understand what exactly they're talking about, instead of listening to these people that are twisting it and turning it and making it sound like something that's just absolutely horrible, and the government wants to out your children and all that sort of thing. And then you have these what do they call me, professors or whatever, and they come out with all these things that aren't true and they're just backward. Mia could totally talk on this.
We'll bring her right up in a second, because I want to get to Nico and then to Mia next. So we're going to give Mia the floor. I'm not sure why that keeps happening, folks. And I'm sure she can provide a lot more great information. And if you haven't seen our episode with her, check it out. And she's got a lot of podcasts and interviews that are just awesome. Mia, you're certainly a star out there right now. Nico, you have a young son, and what are your concerns about the schools themselves as he's growing up and may enter them? Are you concerned that if things aren't taken seriously over the next little bit, it won't be a place that's welcoming for most children?
He's not going into the public system whatsoever. He is staying away from those indoctrination centers. Not happening. Both my wife and I work from home. It's done on purpose, and he's not going to enter that world whatsoever. So I'm not worried, really, because we'll take care of him. I can guarantee you that. But it's unfortunate that our public funds are funding indoctrination centers. That's the biggest problem, because they really are indoctrinating our children, and they're confusing them. They're children. At the end of the day, they don't know any better. That's why they're children. You know, there's a term that the Liberals of Canada use. It's called minor. What was it? Mature minors. Mature minors. That's an oxymoron right there. So there's no such thing as a mature minor, and we need to keep that in mind. But unfortunately, it's the situation in which we are. Our schools are ran by woke individuals. Like, I'll take it even further. It's Marxism 101, what we're seeing in schools right now, except of being have and have nots when it comes to money. They've indoctrinated their emotions. Every single day of your life, you could be a different person. How insane does that sound? How confusing must that be for a child to be told, you know, you're not feeling good today? It's because you're on your way to becoming a woman. So instead of addressing the fact that, yes, you have a lot of new hormones that are going through your body, you don't need to do this. You shouldn't have to go through this. Don't go talk to a mother. Don't go talk to somebody that is a mature woman that has gone through to explain to you what's going on with your body. Instead, here are puberty blockers because you don't deserve to go through this. And for the people out there, if you've never read the book Irreversible Damage by Abigail Schreiers, that book blew my mind, because I did not I always thought that the transgender issue was bearded dudes in dresses trying to get into women's bathroom. That is not what it is. That's what we're being sold is the problem, but that is not what it is. Is our young daughters, is our young girls that are being indoctrinated into believing that their hormones that they get during their puberty is not right and they shouldn't go through it. And it led a great conversation with Buck Angel. Like I'm curious to have a conversation with Blaine outside of this, maybe come on my podcast to address that. But as a conservative Christian, I had a great conversation with Buck Angel, and he's the first one to admit that there's a massive problem, but he's also hated by the trans community for speaking the truth. But I'm always happy to see people like Blaine, seeing people like Buck that are speaking against this. But when it comes to me, my son ain't going to those indoctrination centers.
That's awesome. No, and mine are not either. We're homeschooling. Okay, so Mia, the floor is going to be coming to you. So I'm going to be setting you up here with a question. Do you think this ship is switching? Are we going back to more sanity and more common sense? Because we're hearing, the Olympics. We're hearing New Zealand, the U.S., Alberta. People are taking a stand to protect children. Are we turning a corner here?
Internationally, certainly. In Canada, it's hard to answer that in a positive light. We do, obviously, Alberta, it's the first sign of any sanity in this nation for a decade. So you have to be optimistic about what's going on in Alberta. But apart from that, every other province seems to be, well, some provinces are plummeting in the wrong direction, like Nova Scotia. They're just opening new pediatric gender clinics everywhere that they can, so more kids can fall into this medical scandal. Ontario's just ignoring the whole thing as if it's not happening. Federally, there's no sign of any progress either. And then I just, before we close, I really want to give a special mention to Senator Christopher Wells, because I've been following the response to Bill 9, of course, as we all have, and it's every time somebody moves to protect children anywhere in the world, trans activists lose their mind and start having hysterical meltdowns. In Canada, this time around, it has been quite another level of unhinged response. And I would say the person that leading all of that is a member of our Senate, Christopher Wells. And so he has this absolutely unique ability that it's unrivaled in this country, I think, in that everything he says on this topic is the complete opposite of what is true. But this is an individual who holds a position of authority. He's in our Senate, and he has absolutely no understanding of the science of this medical treatment. He has no understanding of the severity of this medical scandal, and he certainly has no understanding of the social contagion that is sweeping through the adolescent populations. And yet he speaks on this issue as if he is an expert. And then, goodness me, I don't know how many thousands of Canadian trans activists just take everything that he says as true. So I did come up with if anybody wants to know what the truth is about this medical scandal, I came up with a handy trick. You can just take what Christopher Wells says, reverse it, and that's what's true.
I like what you're saying there, and absolutely, I think Jack's going to agree with you. Jack's laughing away here. We know who she's talking about. He's very vocal online. And is he a they, them? I'm not sure, Jack. Do you know?
Senator Wells? No, I believe he's a he, him. I was at a round table with him once where I didn't say a word because I couldn't, because all he did was yell and scream for the entire hour and a half, and then told whoever he was with to not give those people, and he pointed at me and my friends that were just there to ask questions, do not give those people a platform. So he's done that. Then he went online afterwards and actually made a post asking if I was paid to be at that round table when I was I took time off of work. So really the credentials of Senator Wells are really called into play when you act like that. I mean, go ahead and say whatever you want about me. I'm not a senator. I am a citizen. I will say whatever I want. But you're a senator and you're doing this. You okay? Should we call someone for you?
Well, let me go ahead and bring up a recent post by, I guess it's him. So you confirmed gender neutral there. So here's a post that I responded to. So let me go to his post first. So Dr. Christopher Wells, responding to Danielle Smith, who's highlighting that New Zealand has now stopped the use of puberty blockers on minors, acknowledges the lack of credible evidence and the growing concern over long-term harm. And his response was, sorry, nope. When you start with flawed research and bias and then mix it with political ideology, the results are anything but credible. I just want to highlight that's an incredibly ironic sentence for this guy to be providing, because this is exactly what he does right next. Here's what accurate research looks like. There's a link. It's got a politics tag on it because it's not science or medical. And the resounding medical consensus is that gender-affirming care is safe. And then my pushback on this post is, warning, when someone says resounding medical consensus, they are trying to convince you that science is a popularity contest. It is not. Science is based on evidence, not a large collection of opinions. And I got a few quotes here for him to learn from. Quote, if it's consensus, it isn't science. If it's science, it isn't consensus. Consensus is the business of politics. And that was confirmed by the link itself. It's a political post, not a scientific post. This is Michael Creighton. I'm horrible with this, folks. A Harvard-trained MD speaking at Caltech, Environmentalism as Religion, 2003. Another quote here from Richard Feynman. Science is a belief in the ignorance of experts, because, of course, we have to kind of figure out what's really going on here. And the last one from Carl Sagan, arguments from authority are worthless. In science, there are no authorities. So warning, because this is what's going on here. Go ahead. Dina.
May I go to Christopher Wells's tweet? May I just comment on his tweet? Just let me see it on the screen there.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so this is exactly what I'm talking about. When he says, when you start with flawed research and bias, that's the entire field of gender medicine is built on flawed research and bias. And then you mix it with political ideology. That's the entire field of gender medicine. The results are anything but credible. That's the only part that I actually agree with. But then that little link there, what's astonishing about that is he links to a fake systematic review that was drawn up in Utah. He disregards all of the actual real high quality systematic reviews that have been conducted in Sweden, Finland, England, even in Canada. We have a good one at McMaster. That's a whole other story. He disregards all of those solid systematic reviews, and then he takes a fake one that is absolute garbage and holds that up and calls it accurate research. I'm telling you, everything he says is the complete opposite of what is true.
Except for this line where he's projecting, because that's what he does in this post. He does exactly this in this post.
This is his best one. There's so many, but that's hilarious.
That blew my mind when I saw that. I was like, oh, okay. And I read it. I read what he had put there, and I was like, okay, all right. So, but it doesn't surprise me. I mean, like, that's the same guy that had some guy film us in the round table. I'm like, okay. Kelly, you should tell a story, by the way, about how you went to Janice Irwin and asked her for support.
Oh, wow.
And she turned her back on you, like literally turned her back on you, because the press is all over Janice Irwin right now fighting for trans kids. I need you to tell the actual truth about what happened that day as a detransitioner. You went up to her and you asked her for support. And what happened?
When I asked her if she would be supporting or what she would do to support children in Alberta who wanted to detransition, she turned around and walked away.
Yep. So don't sit there and say that you're all for this and all for that if you're going to turn your back on people that need you as well. That just makes me sick when the NDP does that, when their followers support it. It's absolutely disgusting. This is probably why I'm hated a lot, man. I just called this shit out. Oh, stuff out. Sorry.
It is a political position where trans activists say that gender identity is immutable and unchangeable and so fixed that the only way to fix it is to change the child's body. And then we hear them saying that gender is fluid. Well, you can't be a solid and a fluid. The two, it's a binary thing. You're one or the other. You know, and that's where Janice Raymond is. So she could not deal with that moment of being confronted with a detransitioner saying, what are you going to do to support detransitioning kids in Alberta? Because Carla Marks, I mean, the post has been pulled from YouTube, but he posted the death before detransition. And that is a very real movement in Canada that youth are dealing with. We're talking 16, 17-year-old kids who regret transitioning, who wake up and realize, I don't have a breast anymore, what they've done to their body, the permanent nature of it. And then they are faced with, well, just kill yourself. And in Canada, people are being approved for and accessing MAID for transition regret. And that's not being talked about at all. That was not part of the Transgender Day of Remembrance. Like, there was zero mention of how many people who regret transition, who regret the surgeries and living with the consequences of them, who have accessed MAID.
Yeah.
I know.
In Alberta, Lois Cardinal, that would be one fine example of that. Applied twice now. Woke up and realized that he's a sterile Indian. That's the term that he uses now, because he didn't really understand. He was just kind of wrapped up in all the love bombing, as you put it, Kellie-Lynn, and wanted to move forward, but regret hit quickly and fought against it, and the whole community turned against him as he's now struggling with the decisions and the realization that he's sterile. Also lost his boyfriend because the boyfriend didn't want that partner, and understood later that now he's got to stand up and be very strong with his voice. He is also part of some of these roundtables and is one of the biggest proponent of protecting children from the ideology. Blaine, when you're working online, you mentioned that, you know, every second week or so you get called a transphobe. What is it like to be in a community, to be a transsexual, and to have the community turn on you like that?
Well, you know, I think the trans and queer community they don't represent me. I'm not really part of them. I mean, I have found other transsexuals across North America, across the world, who align with where we all stand, where you know, we all agree that kids cannot understand the circumstances. We all face the same thing. We all the traditional transsexual, where we, you know, historically we were 0.06% of the population. So when there is even one kid in a class of 30 identifying this way, that's a concern, because that is way overblown the historical proportion. And so, I think it really demonstrates that their love and kindness and acceptance is just not the case. They refuse to hear the stories of detransitioners. They refuse to even acknowledge, like there could be other views of looking at this. And I think that's part of why, I've, found so many other LGBT conservatives who, we don't identify as LGBT. We identify as Albertan, Canadian, conservative. And all we want is to be to live our lives, and be productive members of society, maybe have a family, have a house, all the same concerns that every other Canadian has.
And Jack, recently you reposted Gays Against Groomers, who posted about Alberta Danielle Smith and their support for her. And you said, hey, my friends are supporting Danielle Smith too. Is this how some of the members in your community see this, as grooming children?
They see it. Well, it depends who you talk to, actually. Nobody within the community that I know. Well, I mean, there's two communities. There's now a queer community, and then there's the rest of us. So,
well, thanks for showing us the distinction on that. What is the distinction there when you say that?
Queer community represents, queer is more of a political stance. Actually, it's more of an umbrella term, is a consensus of those of us that aren't within it. That it's an umbrella term, and you can be anything and be in a queer community. You could be straight, you could be gay, you could be lesbian, you could be trans, you could be transgender, you could be whatever. It's all the whole big umbrella term of identity. So people get underneath
except
that.
Christian conservatives, right?
Well, except for Christian conservatives, yeah, goodness. And then the other side is just, we're just, being gay for myself personally is the least interesting thing about myself. Right, I have so many other things going on in my life. Like there's more interesting things than that. So they take that radicalized ideology and they kind of run with it now, especially here in Alberta. It's just gotten kind of crazy. Like, I understand that they're fired up now because everybody's upset and all that. But yeah, what was the question? I went off on a tangent. I'm so sorry.
No problem. It was about Gays Against Groomers. Do some people see this as grooming children?
Yeah, it depends who you talk to. Some people will say that. I mean, Gays Against Groomers is a fantastic organization. I know a lot of the people that are involved in that. They're very great to me. When I talk to them and all that sort of stuff. So they've come out with some really, really important studies. They've come out with a lot of very important information as well. So, and they're very much up in your face when it comes to it, which is what was needed. So, and we've seen what's been happening in the USA and how things have been turning around quite a lot down there. Kind of hoping that kind of brushes off on us up here. So,
and Mia, from your perspective, do you think this is going to start to look like anti-Albertan sentiment? Like they can be talking about how there's dirty, crazy, transphobic Albertans, or are people going to start waking up to pay attention to what we're actually doing out here, take a deeper look, and maybe start supporting it?
Oh, okay. Can I just comment on the grooming children before that?
Yes, please do.
So it depends, obviously, how you define grooming. The people get really upset by this word. It has another meaning, of course, and that's why people get really upset. But children deserve a childhood grounded in truth. It is important that children are raised in an environment where they are tethered to reality. And if you're teaching young children that they get to choose whether they're boys or girls, if you're teaching young children that they have an inner gender essence, and if they like the toys and clothes of the other sex, that means they are the other sex, that is actually, it is warping their minds, it's confusing them, and it is setting them up for possibly a lifetime of medical intervention before they are old enough to even understand what that means. And then go into adolescence. If you're telling teenagers that if you hate your body, that could be a sign you're trans, then every single adolescent is then at risk of misinterpreting their normal pubertal woes as a sign that they are transgender. That's why we've seen a social contagion in the 2010s, because that's what we've been teaching adolescents. It's not even difficult to draw the link between the two. It's the most obvious social contagion in all of history, and we know exactly what the trigger is. So if that's your definition of grooming, then the answer is yes. We are confusing and untethering young people, and therefore we are setting them up for possibly falling victim to this medical scandal. But as for what are people going to think of Alberta? I mean, I talk to ordinary Canadians everywhere I go, because small talk is such that people will say, "What do you do?" And I tell them in the hair salon, in the Uber, at the bar, wherever I am, I tell people what I do for a living. And Canadians from all walks of life agree with me. I have never had a single one think that it is ethical medical care to chop the healthy breasts off a 16-year-old girl. I've never had anyone think it's okay to lie to children and confuse them into thinking they need body parts chopped off. Decent Canadians absolutely do not support this. So it's hard to get a real feel for it, because on Twitter and in social media, the loudest people are the trans activists, because the ordinary Canadians are afraid to speak. But I do think that we are very near a tipping point where it's not going to be professional suicide to take the right stance on this. It's not you're not going to lose all of your friends if you defend kids. So I'm actually rather optimistic. I just don't know quite when it's going to happen.
Thank you for that. And as we wrap up here and get back to our Saturday, I'm going to do a scientific poll from everybody here. Okay, so raise your hand if you used to be a child. Okay. And now raise your hand if you knew everything as a child and you didn't change your mind as an adult. All right, there we go. I think even Senator Wells would have agreed with that poll, and it's an overwhelming majority. We've all been children, and we've all grown up at some stage. Pretty simple when you think about it that way. So as we wrap up, I'm going to just go around one more time for some closing comments from everybody, and we'll start with Blaine. Blaine, did you enjoy yourself today, and what's in the future for you?
Yeah, always loving to be on here, Jason. Thanks for having me, and it was great to virtually meet Mia for the first time, and Nico as well. So yeah, I mean, I think what I hope is that other premiers start having the the tenacity that Danielle Smith has, and to replicate these bills everywhere. I mean, we have some so-called conservative premiers in Saskatchewan and Ontario and in Atlantic, Canada, who could be conservative and do this. You don't even have to be conservative. Like, this is common sense, but unfortunately the left has become ideologically captured. I would actually potentially have hope that Canoe in Manitoba might have some common sense. He has a few brain cells in there, in comparison to the rest of the NDP. So, you know, I'm not a politician yet, so I can say these types of things. Of course, coming up is our beautiful UCP AGM with 4,000 of our fellow Albertans, and I'm excited for that discussion and dialogue, and just to talk with grassroots Albertans on all the issues facing, because this is such an important topic, but there's so many other big issues going on right now. And I think at the end of the day, if we can do everything we can to protect children, I'm very concerned with the continued human trafficking and sex trafficking that a lot of young people are being pushed into and brought into. I think we have to really start to address some of these big issues and violence against women and everything. So I hope that the ship is turning, but I'm a forever optimist. So.
Fair enough, and we'll see you at that AGM. So make sure you come and find me, and we'll say hello again. Mia, thanks a lot for joining us on a Saturday. You kind of reached out and you said, "Hey, that Bill 9 thing, if you want to chat about it, I'm your woman." I'm like, "Hey, you read my mind," because I was actually thinking of reaching out to you to do exactly that. You are definitely on my short list of fantastic speakers and people that know the subject well. Did you enjoy yourself, and what do you have planned for the future?
Of course, I enjoyed myself. Always pleasure to talk to Canadians. It's so heartwarming. For such a long time, there were very few Canadians speaking publicly on this, and now look at us. We say what we've got to say, and far fewer people are afraid of expressing their opinion, I think. But for me, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm with the Macdonald-Laurier Institute, so everything I write for them is commenting on Canadian issues, federal or provincial. And then I'm the director of GenSpec Canada, so we're getting off the ground, and we'll be focusing on health and education. I have speaking events coming up, and I assure you that I will continue turfing it up on the streets, talking to normal Canadians. And I'm quite certain that I won't be meeting any opposition or resistance, because I truly do believe that most Canadians, decent people everywhere, do not support this. And as soon as they find out what's actually going on, I must just give a quick shout out to the mainstream media for their appalling failure on this. If they even had any integrity whatsoever and they reported truthfully on both sides of the issue, then more decent Canadians would be joining the fight. I don't believe that it's their fault that they don't understand if they get their news from the mainstream media. I put a lot of the blame on the mainstream media, so I'll keep criticizing them too.
Fantastic. And we're looking forward to having you in Alberta January 10th. It looks like we're going to make that happen, and people can come meet you and hear from you as well. January 10th, Red Deer. Kellie-Lynn, the best hug I got in a long time was at the AGM by you. It's a very warm embrace that you provided, and it was great to meet you in person. Did you enjoy yourself here today, and what do you have planned for the future?
Yeah, I did. Thank you very much for having this discussion. I'm a seminary student, so I'm looking forward to doing an essay on the links between the decision to transition and trauma experiences in childhood. So, yeah.
Wow.
Thank
See,
you.
definitely, I saw Nico's eyebrows raised there. Maybe there's an interview in the future there for you as well, because Nico definitely would relate very well to those kind of conversations. So I can see Nico. He's like, oh my gosh, I got to get all these phone numbers. Jack, I'm looking forward to finally meeting you. We kind of just passed quickly at the United Conference or Unity Conference in Calgary.
Yeah.
So one day, hopefully, I get to meet you in person. But thanks for joining us today. And did you enjoy yourself? And what can we look forward to for Jack, other than your awesome posts on X?
I had a great time. Thank you very much. It's really, really good to see everybody here. It's really awesome to meet you, Nico. Like, I've seen you work as well. You and Jason do a show, and you do it with Rob the Builder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's amazing too. So that's
he's
awesome.
my anti-woke liberal. Him
He's
and I
great.
argue every day about politics as a Christian conservative.
Really?
Yeah, the political orphans. Yeah, so it's.
Yeah.
I know Mia follows him too. I was just texting him right now to say, guess who I'm speaking to right now? Rob.
Yeah.
So
Mia's amazing. Yeah, I met Mia at the Unity Conference as well. Blaine I've known forever. Same with Kellie-Lynn and all that. But no, it's great. What's coming for me? Something rather big in the new year. So
We'll be watching for that.
Everybody's gonna be like, oh my god. So, but yeah, it'd be fun. But no, thank you so much. This was amazing. You're amazing for doing this, and thank you. I appreciate this. And so,
thank you. That's very awesome of you. And yeah, reach out in the new year, whatever you got brewing there. Let us know, and maybe we'll talk about it. Nico, here we go. Saturday afternoon conversation, and we even had the Minister of Justice from Alberta on. Source One is starting to pick up some steam. So thanks for joining us. Did you have some fun? And what's in the future for you? Obviously, a bunch of interviews. You got a bunch of new interviews to do.
But I'll continue doing my political orphans. I'm a political commentator, and I call it how it is. I think you guys can see I'm really toned down today. Jason asked me to be careful because if you think James swears, I'm a French guy from Montreal, so I have to be very, very careful on these types of podcasts. But you know, I just appreciate what everybody's doing here because it scares the hell out of me. I have a 4-month-old boy. It scares the hell out of me what's coming. So we need to have some people with common sense back to the equation. So I'm happy to hear you guys talk about this. And one of the things I want to put out there is for the people that might not know, MAID is going to come for our kids soon. So as Kellie-Lynn was talking about, the term mature minors is stated for trying for the adoption of MAID for children with mental issues. That's where I got the word from. So for the people out there that don't know, MAID is trying to come after children. And guess what? Trans kids are going to be targeted by those new MAID procedures, and we cannot let that happen. So wake up, guys. They're coming after our children.
Thank you very much to the entire panel. Thank you to Honorable Amery. I won't call you Mickey or Mr. Amery again next time if we get him back on. But I really enjoyed myself because these are the conversations I think we need to have. We're being very open, honest, and really enjoyed seeing Blaine again, Kellie-Lynn, Jack/James, whatever you're going by now, and Mia. It was a pleasure of mine to meet you at the Unity Conference. Maybe it was just fate or something. You're just standing in line, getting ready to your room. You overhear me talking about going to the JCCF event. You needed a ride, bada boom, bada bing. We actually ended up at the same table somehow. But anyways, Mia, it was great to have you on, and looking forward to bringing you out to Alberta to have some more conversations. And hopefully most of this panel can join us as well in Red Deer on January 10th. So everybody, have yourself a wonderful afternoon. Share this out. Make sure you share it. And remember, love you all very much, and God bless.